The chalk snapped in Jamal Washington's hand as 30 pairs of eyes locked onto him. "I bet you can't solve this equation," Mr. Peterson sneered, gesturing at the complex differential on the board. "Did someone help you cheat, or did you just copy from the internet?" Jamal's heart pounded as he realized that no matter what he did next, nothing would ever be the same again. Before we dive into this powerful story about hidden talent and overcoming prejudice, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button if you've ever had your abilities underestimated, and subscribe to join our community sharing stories that matter. Are you ready to see what happens when assumptions are shattered and true genius is finally recognized? Let's discover how one moment of humiliation becomes the catalyst for extraordinary change. Jamal Washington had always been the quietest student in room 317 at Westlake Academy, a prestigious private school on the outskirts of Chicago, where the manicured lawns and colonial architecture conveyed a sense of tradition and privilege that made him feel perpetually out of place. At 15, he was one of only 7 black students in the entire sophomore class of '98. His presence, the result of a full academic scholarship that covered his tuition but couldn't shield him from the subtle glances and assumptions that followed him through the hallways. Life hadn't been easy since losing both parents in a car accident when he was 8, leaving his grandmother Elaine Washington to raise him in their modest 2-bedroom apartment 30 minutes and a socio-economic world away from Westlake's pristine campus. Miss Braffett, Elaine, as everyone called her, worked 2 jobs, daytime administrative assistant and weekend catering staff, to keep their lives stable, her unwavering belief in education as the path forward manifest in the sacrifices she made to support Jamal's future. "Your mind is the one thing nobody can take from you," she often told him, pride evident in her voice whenever she spoke of the exceptional test scores that had earned him the coveted Westlake scholarship. What neither Miss Elaine nor anyone at Westlake knew, however, was the depth of Jamal's mathematical abilities, a talent he had deliberately kept hidden since his first day at the elite school. Each night after completing his regular homework with the careful competence that earned him consistent A-minuses, Jamal would close his bedroom door and pull out battered composition notebooks filled with his true work explorations of number theory, complex calculus problems, and elegant proofs that would challenge university mathematics students. His habit of mathematical concealment had begun in elementary school, where standing out for being too smart had earned him taunts and isolation. By middle school, he had perfected the art of being just good enough to maintain excellent grades without drawing undue attention, a survival strategy that had become second nature by the time he arrived at Westlake. Jamal's room held shelves of mathematics books acquired from thrift stores and library sales, their advanced content disguised by plain book covers he'd made himself. His laptop browser history revealed hours spent watching MIT OpenCourseWare lectures and reading research papers from mathematical journals, intellectual pursuits he mentioned to no one except his 2 closest friends at Westlake. Tyler Chen had discovered Jamal's secret ability accidentally during freshman year when he'd stopped by unannounced to drop off class notes and found Jamal deep in solving a partial differential equation far beyond their differential equation. Curriculum. Rather than exposing him, Tyler, a Chinese-American student with his own experiences of racial stereotyping, had become Jamal's confidant and occasional mathematical sparring partner, though he freely admitted he couldn't keep up with Jamal's intuitive leaps. Amara Johnson, another scholarship student and one of the few black girls in their grade, had joined their small circle of trust after defending Jamal against veiled insults from wealthier students. The 3 formed a tight-knit group united by their outsider status in Westlake's predominantly white, affluent student body. Only one teacher had glimpsed Jamal's exceptional talent, Dr. Acher. Gloria Martinez, their regular mathematics instructor, had noticed his unusual speed in grasping new concepts and the elegant efficiency of his solutions, even when he deliberately introduced small errors to avoid perfect scores. She had approached him privately after class one day, offering advanced materials and mentorship, but Jamal had politely declined, claiming he was focused on maintaining balanced grades across all subjects, as his grandmother advised. Dr. Martinez hadn't pressed the issue, respecting his choice, while keeping a watchful eye on his understated progress. Mathematics will always be there when you're ready to embrace it fully. She had told him with a knowing smile that suggested she understood more than she said. The fragile balance Jamal had maintained between his public and private mathematical lives was threatened when Dr. Martinez announced she would be taking a 2-week leave to attend to a family emergency. "Your substitute will be Mr. Richard Peterson," she informed the class, an experienced mathematics teacher who has recently relocated to our district. "I expect you to show him the same respect you've shown me." The warning bells in Jamal's mind began ringing the moment Mr. Peterson walked into the classroom the following Monday, a tall, middle-aged white man with wire-rimmed glasses and a demeanor that combined academic arrogance with barely concealed disdain as he surveyed the students before him. "I understand this is an honors class." He began, his gaze lingering momentarily longer on the few minority students, "though I'll need to assess for myself whether the curriculum has been appropriately rigorous." That first day established a pattern that made Jamal increasingly uncomfortable. Peterson consistently called on white students first, regardless of whose hand was raised earliest. He expressed surprise when Tyler answered difficult questions correctly, and he made casual comments about which students seemed naturally gifted for mathematical thinking. Invariably, the white and Asian students in the front row. When Peterson assigned a challenging problem set that Jamal completed in 20 minutes, while others struggled for the full period, he deliberately left several answers incomplete and introduced minor calculational errors, his instinct for self-preservation overriding his love for mathematical precision. Tyler noticed, of course, whispering, "You're still doing it, man. Why not just show what you can do?" But Jamal merely shook his head, slightly eyes down the weight of experience, informing his caution. By the end of Peterson's first week, the classroom dynamic had shifted noticeably. The previously collaborative atmosphere had become tense and competitive, with Peterson creating an unspoken hierarchy of mathematical ability that placed Jamal and other minority students firmly in the lower tiers, regardless of their actual performance. For Jamal, who had navigated similar situations throughout his academic life, the familiar strategy was to keep his head down and wait for Dr. Martinez's return, a plan that would have worked if not for the events that unfolded the following Tuesday, when Peterson's casual prejudice transformed into something more direct and devastating. The third day of Mr. Peterson's second week began like the others, with the substitute teacher writing a series of problems on the board while making occasional remarks about separating the truly gifted from those just following procedures. The classroom's atmosphere had grown increasingly uncomfortable as Peterson's pattern of favoring certain students while dismissing others became impossible to ignore. Jamal sat in his usual spot in the third row, neither front nor back, a position carefully chosen to avoid drawing attention. He had spent the previous evening helping his grandmother prepare for a catering job while simultaneously working through a fascinating problem in algebraic number theory, getting only 5 hours of sleep before arriving at school that morning. As Peterson turned from the board with an expression of smug satisfaction, he surveyed the classroom with the air of someone about to deliver a challenge he believed impossible. "This," he announced, tapping the final equation he'd written, "is well beyond high school level. In fact, I'd be surprised if many college students could solve it elegantly. But perhaps someone would like to attempt it." His gaze swept past Jamal and the other minority students, landing expectantly on the usual favorites in the front row. When no hands raised, Peterson's satisfaction seemed to grow. "No volunteers, I'm not surprised. This differential equation involves techniques you won't encounter until advanced university courses." Tyler, seated beside Jamal, nudged him gently. "Dude," he whispered, "I've seen you solve harder ones for fun. Show him." Jamal shook his head slightly. The instinct for self-protection warring with his love for mathematics and growing frustration with Peterson's behavior. After another moment of uncomfortable silence, during which Peterson began making comments about mathematical aptitude being evident by now, Jamal slowly raised his hand, surprising himself almost as much as his classmates, many of whom turned to look at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to concern. Peterson's eyebrows rose as he noticed Jamal's raised hand, and a subtle smile played at the corners of his mouth. Not the encouraging smile of a teacher hoping for a student's success, but the anticipatory smirk of someone expecting to witness failure. "Mr. Washington," he said, drawing out the name, "you believe you can solve this. By all means, approach the board." The walk to the front of the classroom felt endless, each step carrying Jamal farther from the safety of anonymity. He accepted the chalk Peterson held out, careful not to make contact with the teacher's fingers, and turned to face the equation, a complex differential with multiple variables and nested functions that would indeed challenge many undergraduate students. But to Jamal, whose nights were filled with far more advanced mathematics, the pathway to solution was clear, if not trivial. Taking a deep breath, he began to write, his hand moving with practiced precision as he applied substitutions and transformations that reflected his deep understanding of the underlying principles. The classroom fell completely silent except for the soft sound of chalk on board as Jamal worked methodically through the steps, his mind fully engaged with the mathematics rather than the increasingly stunned expression on Peterson's face. 4 minutes later, Jamal wrote the final simplified form of the solution, added the conventional QED symbol, and turned to face the class chalk dust coating his fingers. Peterson stared at the solution, mouth slightly open, before his expression hardened into something between suspicion and anger. "Where did you see this problem before?" he demanded, his tone accusatory rather than impressed. Jamal blinked in confusion. "I haven't seen it before, sir. I just applied the standard approach for this class of differential equations." Peterson laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. "Standard approach? This is well beyond the curriculum. You must have looked this up or had someone show you the solution. There's no way you solved this independently." The accusation hung in the air, heavy and humiliating, as 30 pairs of eyes focused on Jamal, whose cheeks burned with a combination of anger and embarrassment. "I can explain my solution methodology," Jamal offered quietly, turning back to the board. "Here I used separation of variables followed by this substitution to transform the equation into a more manageable form. Then I applied." Peterson cut him off, stepping forward to erase a portion of Jamal's work. "Explain this step specifically," he demanded, pointing to an intermediate transformation. "Without looking at the rest of your solution, tell me how you determined this approach." The erasure of his work felt like a physical blow, but Jamal steadied himself and began explaining the theoretical justification for the step in question, drawing on his extensive independent study of differential equations. His explanation referenced principles from advanced calculus and demonstrated a conceptual understanding that went far beyond memorized procedures. As he spoke, he could see confusion replacing certainty in Peterson's expression, the teacher clearly unprepared for such a comprehensive response. But rather than acknowledge Jamal's evident mastery, Peterson's expression hardened further. "That's enough," he interrupted again. "Let's try something else." He erased Jamal's entire solution, ignoring the murmurs of protest from several students, and wrote a new, even more complex equation on the board. "I bet you can't solve this one," he said, the challenge in his voice unmistakable as he held out the chalk. "Unless, of course, you've memorized solutions to an impressive array of university-level problems." The classroom had gone completely silent, the usual shuffling of papers and whispered conversations extinguished by the obvious tension between teacher and student. Jamal took the chalk, which snapped between his fingers as he gripped it too tightly, betraying the emotion behind his carefully controlled expression. This new problem was genuinely challenging, involving techniques from both differential equations and complex analysis, but the principles were familiar to Jamal from his late-night explorations of mathematical literature. Despite his shaking hands, he began working through the solution, his mind, finding refuge in the clarity and certainty of mathematics, while everything else around him felt chaotic and threatening. When he completed the solution, several minutes later, having taken a novel approach that reflected his unique understanding, the silence in the classroom had deepened to something almost physical. Peterson stared at the board, his face transitioning through disbelief to anger barely disguised as academic skepticism. "This is impossible," he finally said, voice tight. "There's simply no way a student at your level could solve this without prior knowledge. Did someone help you cheat, or did you just copy from the internet?" The accusation was explicit now, and far more damaging than the subtle dismissals of previous days. Jamal stood at the board chalk dust on his hands, facing not just Peterson but his own moment of truth, years of hiding his abilities colliding with this public challenge to both his intelligence and his integrity. Before he could respond, the bell rang with jarring suddenness, releasing a tension that had built to nearly unbearable levels. Students began gathering their belongings, many casting sympathetic glances toward Jamal, who remained frozen at the front of the classroom, the elegant mathematical solutions behind him, contrasting sharply with the turmoil visible on his pretty face. "We'll continue this discussion tomorrow," Peterson announced, his tone carrying a vague threat. "I expect honest work in my classroom." As students filed out, Jamal finally moved, returning to his desk on legs that felt unsteady. Tyler and Amara waited for him, their faces showing the concern they didn't voice until the three were alone in the hallway. "That was straight-up discrimination," Amara said fiercely. "He wouldn't have questioned you if you were white." Tyler nodded in agreement, adding, "But man, you destroyed those problems. Everyone saw it." Jamal said nothing, his mind racing through implications and possible outcomes, knowing only that the careful balance he had maintained throughout his academic life had just been irrevocably shattered, though he couldn't yet see whether the consequences would be devastating or transformative. Jamal spent the lunch period hiding in the second-floor bathroom, sitting on the closed toilet lid in the last stall, his untouched sandwich still wrapped in his backpack. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as he pressed his palms against his eyes, trying to process the public humiliation he'd just experienced. This wasn't the first time a teacher had underestimated him based on appearance. There was the third-grade science fair where Mrs. Bennett had accused him of having his parents build his project, or the sixth-grade standardized test where Mr. Collins had requested he retake it under supervision after scoring in the 99th percentile, or the countless times teachers expressed surprise at his articulate answers or extensive vocabulary as though these were anomalies, rather than natural expressions of his intelligence. But something about this confrontation with Peterson felt different, more directly, threatening to Jamal's carefully constructed academic life and future prospects. The scholarship that had opened Westlake's doors could just as easily disappear if he became labeled a troublemaker or, worse, a cheater. His grandmother had sacrificed too much for him to risk everything over one substitute teacher's prejudice, no matter how unfair or hurtful. His solitude was interrupted by the bathroom door swinging open, followed by Tyler's voice, "Jamal, you in here, man." Moments later, Amara's voice joined in. "I don't care if it's the boys' bathroom. We're checking every floor until we find him." Jamal sighed, gathering himself before unlocking the stall door to face his friend's concerned expressions. "You shouldn't be in here," he told Amara weakly. She rolled her eyes, pushing past him to sit on the radiator under the window. "Like that's our biggest problem right now. Peterson's behavior was completely out of line, and we need to report him." Tyler nodded emphatically, leaning against the sink. "Seriously, what he did crosses every professional boundary. Dr. Martinez would never allow that kind of treatment." Jamal shook his head, the weight of experience evident in his voice. "Reporting him could make everything worse. It's my word against his, and he's the teacher." The administration always sides with faculty in these situations. The memory of previous attempts to address unfair treatment flashed through his mind. The dismissive responses, the suggestions that he was being oversensitive or misinterpreting interactions. "Besides," he continued, "I can't risk my scholarship. Westlake is my ticket to a good college, which means a good job, which means eventually taking care of my grandmother the way she's taken care of me." Amara's expression softened with understanding, but didn't lose its determination. "So what's your plan? Let Peterson keep treating you like this for another week until Dr. Martinez returns. What if he escalates?" Her questions hung in the air unanswerable because Jamal himself didn't know how to navigate this situation. The bell signaling the end of lunch period saved him from responding, though the reprieve was temporary. We should document everything Tyler suggested as they gathered their belongings. I can record his class on my phone. Michigan is a one-party consent state for recording, so it's technically legal. The idea of having objective evidence appealed to Jamal, though he remained hesitant about confrontation. Let's just see how tomorrow goes, he conceded. Maybe today was a one-time thing. But they all knew this was unlikely given Peterson's clear pattern of behavior. The following day confirmed their fears. Tyler positioned his phone discreetly on his desk camera, angled toward the front of the classroom, as Peterson entered with a stack of papers. "Pop quiz," he announced with evident satisfaction. "Let's see how everyone performs under test conditions." The quiz contained problems of exceptional difficulty, several clearly beyond the current curriculum. Jamal could solve all of them without much effort, but the memory of Peterson's accusations kept him from demonstrating his full ability. Instead, he deliberately answered only 80% correctly, introducing plausible errors in the more complex problems, a strategy that felt like both self-preservation and painful self-betrayal. Throughout the quiz, Peterson walked between the desks but lingered longest, behind Jamal his presence a tangible pressure that made focusing difficult. "Pencils down, Peterson," announced after 30 minutes, collecting the papers with a smug expression that suggested he anticipated the results with pleasure rather than concern. The next day's class began with Peterson returning the graded quizzes, making a show of announcing scores as he distributed them. "Excellent work, miss." Hamilton, 92%. He praised a blonde girl in the front row. "Very impressive, Mr. Goldstein," 88%. When he reached Jamal, his tone changed noticeably. "Mr. Washington, 76%. I've noted several interesting errors in your work." The emphasis he placed on interesting carried clear insinuation, though Jamal had been careful to make his intentional mistakes mathematically consistent. Before Peterson could continue, Amara's voice cut through the classroom. "Excuse me, mister." Peterson, but 76% on that quiz, is actually impressive given the advanced nature of the problems you included. Several were from the AP Calculus BC curriculum, which most of us won't take until senior year. Her defense, while accurate, only seemed to irritate Peterson further. "Miss Johnson, I don't recall asking for your analysis of the quiz difficulty. Perhaps you should focus more on your own score of 68%. The public humiliation strategy now extended beyond Jamal to his allies, a development that visibly angered several other students. "That's not fair," another student murmured loud enough to be heard. Peterson's head snapped toward the source of the comment. "Miss Johnson, since you seem to have opinions about appropriate classroom conduct, perhaps you'd benefit from discussing them with Principal Thornton. Take your things and report to the main office." The dismissal was a clear power play, silencing potential dissent by making an example of Amara. As she gathered her belongings head held high, despite the obvious injustice, the classroom atmosphere shifted palpably. Lines were being drawn between students who recognized the unfairness unfolding before them and those who accepted Peterson's authority without question. Jamal watched Amara leave guilt and anger competing for dominance in his mind. The confrontation was expanding beyond him, now affecting his friends and potentially dividing the class. That evening, Jamal's grandmother noticed his unusual quietness during dinner. "Something's troubling you," she observed her tone, making it a statement rather than a question. School matters, Jamal considered telling her everything, the mathematical abilities he'd hidden for years, Peterson's discrimination, the growing tension at school. But the worry lines already etching her forehead from working 60-hour weeks stopped him. "Just some challenging material with our substitute teacher," he said instead. "Dr. Martinez will be back next week." Miss Elaine studied him with eyes that had always seen more than he admitted, but she didn't press further, respecting the boundaries he'd established. Later that night, Tyler and Amara came over to review the video evidence they'd gathered and discuss strategy. "Principal Thornton just gave me a warning about respecting substitute teachers' authority." Amara reported her frustration evident. "He didn't even ask for my side of the story." Tyler played back portions of the recording, which clearly showed Peterson's differential treatment of students and his inappropriate challenging of Jamal. "We need more than this," Jamal admitted reluctantly. "The administration will say he was just pushing me academically, or that we're misinterpreting his intentions." The three friends spent hours documenting Peterson's pattern of behavior, collecting statements from sympathetic classmates and researching the substitute teacher's background. What they discovered was troubling. Peterson had taught at 3 different schools in the past 5 years, never staying longer than 2 semesters at any position. Social media searches revealed comments from former students alleging similar behavior, accusations of favoritism, dismissal of minority students' abilities, and creating hostile classroom environments. "There's a pattern here," Tyler observed, scrolling through the evidence they'd compiled. But will anyone at Westlake care enough to investigate? It was a question none of them could answer with confidence. The elite private school had an excellent academic reputation, but a less impressive record on addressing issues of bias or discrimination. The three debated their options, approaching Dr. Martinez directly upon her return, taking their concerns to the principal, despite Amara's unsatisfying interaction appealing to the school board or seeking outside advocacy. Each path seemed fraught with potential complications and uncertain outcomes. "What about Dr. Williams?" Tyler suggested suddenly. "The mathematics professor who runs that weekend mentorship program at the university. He might have some guidance on handling this." James Williams was a respected black mathematician at the nearby university who had established an outreach program for promising high school students interested in STEM fields. Jamal had seen flyers for the program but had been too hesitant to apply, fearing the additional attention it might bring. "He doesn't even know me," Jamal objected. "Why would he get involved?" Amara and Tyler exchanged knowing glances. "Actually," Amara admitted, "I may have mentioned you to him at the last Women in STEM conference. He seemed very interested in meeting you." The revelation that his friends had discussed his mathematical abilities with others might once have bothered Jamal, but after Peterson's public challenging, maintaining his anonymity seemed less critical than finding allies who could help navigate this increasingly complicated situation. "Fine," he agreed reluctantly. "Set up a meeting if you can. But no promises that I'll share my notebooks or anything like that." The decision made, the three friends continued planning their documentation efforts, aware that each day brought new opportunities for Peterson to create a hostile environment and new evidence to support their case. As Jamal walked his friends to the door that evening, the weight of the situation pressed heavily upon him, along with the realization that the careful invisibility he had maintained for years was dissolving, forcing him to consider what might emerge in its place. Have you ever experienced a teacher or authority figure who underestimated your abilities based on appearances or stereotypes? Comment number 1, if you've faced bias in educational settings, or number 2, if you've been lucky enough to have consistently supportive teachers. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about overcoming prejudice and recognizing hidden potential in unexpected places. I'm curious, what would you do in Jamal's situation? Should he continue hiding his mathematical gift to protect himself, or is it time to step into the spotlight and challenge Peterson's assumptions head-on? Let's continue following Jamal's journey as he connects with a potential mentor who might help him navigate this critical turning point. The university coffee shop bustled with Saturday afternoon activity as Jamal, Tyler, and Amara waited nervously for Dr. James Williams to arrive. Jamal had brought one composition notebook, not his most advanced work, but enough to demonstrate his mathematical abilities if absolutely necessary. He still wasn't convinced this meeting was a good idea. Exposing his talents to an established mathematician meant no turning back, no more comfortable anonymity or controlled perceptions. "Relax," Amara whispered, noticing his tense posture. "Dr. Williams is known for mentoring young mathematicians, especially those from underrepresented groups. He's not going to judge you." Before Jamal could respond, a tall, distinguished black man in his early 50s approached their table, his casual button-down and jeans contrasting with the intense intelligence evident in his eyes. "You must be Jamal," he said warmly, extending his hand. "And Tyler and Amara. Thank you for reaching out. Dr. Williams ordered coffee for himself and insisted on refreshing their drinks before settling into the fourth chair at their table. So he began without preamble, "Tell me about this situation with your substitute teacher." For the next 15 minutes, the three friends took turns explaining Peterson's behavior, sharing video clips on Tyler's phone, and detailing the confrontation over the differential equations. Williams listened attentively, his expression growing increasingly concerned. "Unfortunately, this scenario is all too familiar," he said when they finished. "I've experienced similar challenges throughout my career, though perhaps less blatant in recent years." He turned his full attention to Jamal. "Amara mentioned you have a special aptitude for mathematics. Would you be willing to show me some of your work?" The moment of truth had arrived. Jamal hesitated, years of protective instincts warring with the need for support. Finally, he slid his composition notebook across the table, opening it to a middle page filled with dense mathematical notations. "This is just some recreational exploration," he explained, downplaying its significance. "Nothing special, Doctor." Williams adjusted his glasses and began examining the work, his expression shifting from polite interest to growing surprise and then to something approaching astonishment. He flipped through several pages, occasionally tracing a particularly complex derivation with his finger before looking up at Jamal with new understanding. "This is exceptional work," he said quietly, "far beyond undergraduate level in several aspects." "How long have you been exploring these concepts?" Jamal shrugged uncomfortably. "Since elementary school, I guess. Math makes sense to me in a way other things don't always." Williams nodded, continuing to examine the notebook. "This section here," he said, pointing to a series of equations, relates to an unsolved problem in number theory. "Are you familiar with the Riemann hypothesis and its connections to prime number distribution?" When Jamal launched into an explanation of his approach to related questions, demonstrating both deep understanding and innovative thinking. Williams sat back in his chair, visibly impressed. "Jamal, what you're doing here isn't just recreational exploration. This is original research approaching known problems from angles that established mathematicians haven't fully explored. Your intuition for these structures is remarkable. The validation from a respected mathematician should have been gratifying, but Jamal's expression remained guarded. "It doesn't matter how good I am if people like Peterson assume I must be cheating the moment I demonstrate any ability," he said bitterly. Williams' face softened with recognition. "I understand that feeling all too well," he said. "When I was an undergraduate at MIT, a professor accused me of plagiarism on my first topology paper because it was too sophisticated for a first-year student. When I was a doctoral candidate, colleagues often assumed I was there due to affirmative action rather than merit, despite my publication record." He leaned forward, his gaze direct. "The question isn't whether these experiences happen. They will continue throughout your career, unfortunately. But how you respond to them while protecting both your dignity and your love for mathematics." For the next hour, Dr. Williams shared strategies for documenting discrimination while continuing to develop mathematical skills. He explained the importance of building networks of support, finding mentors who recognize genuine ability, and maintaining perspective about whose opinions truly mattered. Document everything, he advised, echoing the approach the friends had already begun. Contemporaneous records are powerful evidence, but don't let the documentation become more important than your mathematical development. As their discussion continued, Williams made an unexpected offer. "I'd like to invite you to join my research group at the university. We meet twice weekly to explore various problems in pure mathematics, including some areas related to your work on prime number distributions." The invitation stunned Jamal. "But I'm only a sophomore in high school," he objected. "Your group is probably all graduate students and professors." Williams smiled. "Mathematics doesn't care about age or educational credentials. It cares about insight, creativity, and rigorous thinking, all of which you've demonstrated abundantly." The validation was both exhilarating and terrifying for Jamal, who had spent years deliberately dimming his mathematical light. "I'll think about it," he promised, not yet ready to commit to such a public acknowledgement of his abilities. As they prepared to leave the coffee shop, Williams helped the three friends craft a formal complaint documenting Peterson's behavior, drawing on his own experiences navigating academic bureaucracy. Remember, he advised, this isn't just about you, Jamal. It's about every student who comes after you who might face similar treatment without the exceptional abilities that make your case so clear-cut. The words resonated with Jamal, who had never considered that standing up for himself might create space for others as well. Their meeting concluded with Williams driving Jamal home, using the opportunity for a more private conversation. As they pulled up outside Jamal's apartment building, Williams offered one final piece of advice. Your mathematical gift is exceptional, Jamal. Hiding it may feel like protection, but it's also a profound loss, not just for you but for the entire field. The world needs diverse perspectives in mathematics, perhaps now more than ever. Watching Williams drive away, Jamal felt simultaneously exposed and supported, uncertain yet strangely hopeful about the path forward. The decision to file a formal complaint remained daunting, but having a respected mathematician validate both his abilities and his concerns made the prospect less isolating. The following Monday, Jamal arrived at school to find Peterson waiting in the hallway outside the mathematics classroom, his expression darkening when he spotted Jamal. "Mr. Washington," he called out, voice tight with barely controlled anger. "I saw you meeting with Dr. Williams from the university on Saturday. Are you attempting to circumvent proper channels with outside intervention?" The revelation that Peterson had seen them was unsettling. Had he been following Jamal? Or was the meeting just an unfortunate coincidence before Jamal could formulate a response? Tyler and Amara flanked him protectively. "We're going to be late for class, Mr. Peterson," Amara said firmly, guiding Jamal past the substitute teacher. Inside the classroom, Peterson's antagonism reached new heights, manifesting in a mathematical competition that seemed specifically designed to embarrass Jamal by pitching him against selected students in solving increasingly difficult problems. When Jamal solved each one correctly, despite Peterson's interruptions and criticisms, the substitute's frustration became palpable. Tyler's phone recorded it all. The dismissive comments, the accusations of prior knowledge, the clear pattern of discrimination that could no longer be dismissed as mere pedagogical strictness. That afternoon, the three friends, along with Dr. Williams, submitted their formal complaint to Principal Eleanor Simmons. The documentation included video evidence, written statements from classmates, records of Peterson's pattern of behavior, and an assessment from Williams regarding the advanced nature of the mathematical problems Jamal had solved and the inappropriateness of Peterson's response. As they left the principal's office, Jamal felt a strange combination of vulnerability and strength. The protective walls he had built around his mathematical identity were crumbling, but something new and potentially more powerful was emerging in their place, a willingness to stand in the full light of his abilities, regardless of others' assumptions or prejudices. Dr. Williams' parting words echoed in his mind. Mathematics has always been a universal language that transcends cultural boundaries. Don't let anyone convince you there isn't a place for your voice in that conversation. Principal Eleanor Simmons' office projected exactly the impression she intended: tasteful, traditional, and thoroughly intimidating. Oak bookshelves lined with educational texts and administrative manuals framed her substantial desk behind which she sat with perfect posture, her expression professionally neutral as she reviewed the documentation Jamal and his supporters had submitted. "I appreciate you bringing these concerns to my attention," she began, her tone measured and non-committal. "Westlake Academy takes all student complaints seriously and has established procedures for addressing such matters." The emphasis on procedures rather than the substance of the complaint itself wasn't lost on Jamal, who sat uncomfortably in one of the visitor chairs across from her desk. However, Simmons continued tapping the substantial folder before her. There may be alternative interpretations of these interactions. Teaching styles vary considerably, and what might appear as targeting could simply be Mr. Peterson's approach to challenging students he believes capable of more advanced work. The suggestion that Jamal had misunderstood Peterson's intentions felt dismissive, especially given the extensive evidence they had provided. With respect, Principal Simmons, Dr. Williams interjected the video. "Evidence shows a clear pattern of differential treatment. Mr. Peterson's behavior goes well beyond challenging a capable student. It demonstrates consistent bias in how he responds to Jamal's mathematical abilities compared to those of other students. Simmons' smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Dr. Williams, while we appreciate your interest in our students' education, internal matters at Westlake are typically addressed without outside intervention. Her gaze shifted meaningfully to Jamal. Additionally, I feel obligated to mention that scholarship students are expected to maintain exemplary behavioral records. Accusations against faculty members are serious matters that naturally invite heightened scrutiny of the student's overall standing. The implied threat was clear. Pursuing the complaint could potentially endanger Jamal's scholarship status. Before Jamal could respond to this thinly veiled intimidation, the office door opened after a brief knock revealing Miss Cobber in missandablank.com. Elaine Washington, still dressed in her administrative assistant uniform from her day job. "I apologize for my lateness," she said, voice firm despite her evident fatigue. Traffic was heavier than anticipated. Jamal stared in surprise. He hadn't told his grandmother about the meeting, not wanting to burden her with additional concerns. "Tyler called me," she explained quietly as she took the seat beside him. "He thought I should be here." Principal Simmons' expression shifted subtly as she reassessed the situation, now facing not just a student with outside support, but also a determined family advocate. "Miss Washington, we were just discussing your grandson's concerns about a substitute teacher's classroom approach." Miss Elaine placed her weathered hand over Jamal's. "I'd like to see the evidence myself, if you don't mind," she requested with the calm authority that had managed Jamal's household through years of challenges. For the next 30 minutes, she reviewed the documentation thoroughly, including watching several video clips on Tyler's phone, her expression growing increasingly troubled. When she finished, she looked directly at Principal Simmons. "My grandson has maintained exceptional academic standing while navigating environments where his intelligence is consistently underestimated due to his appearance. The scholarship that brings him to Westlake isn't charity. It's recognition of his extraordinary potential, which your institution benefits from as much as he does." She leaned forward slightly, her dignity undiminished by her work clothes or evident exhaustion. "If Westlake cannot provide an educational environment free from the kind of discriminatory behavior documented here, perhaps we should reconsider whether this is the appropriate school for Jamal's talent, scholarship or no." Scholarship. The subtle power shift in the room was palpable. Principal Simmons, recognizing that intimidation would no longer be effective, adjusted her approach. "Of course, Miss Washington, we value Jamal's contributions to our academic community. I assure you we'll conduct a thorough investigation of these allegations." Dr. Williams, who had remained attentively silent during Miss Elaine's intervention, spoke up again. "I hope you understand that this situation extends beyond a simple misunderstanding or clash of teaching styles. As a university professor familiar with the mathematical content in question, I can state unequivocally that Jamal demonstrated exceptional problem-solving abilities that Mr. Peterson then inappropriately questioned and dismissed in a manner consistent with discriminatory patterns. The addition of Williams' professional assessment further complicated Simmons' attempt to minimize the situation, particularly as the university represented a significant source of college placements for Westlake graduates. The meeting concluded with Simmons promising a formal investigation and temporary reassignment of Jamal to another mathematics section until Dr. Martinez returned. However, her carefully worded commitments contained no acknowledgement of wrongdoing or concrete steps to address the underlying issues. As they left the principal's office, Jamal felt conflicted about the outcome. "Do you think anything will actually change?" he asked Dr. Williams quietly. "Institutional change is rarely immediate," Williams acknowledged. "But documenting and formally challenging discriminatory behavior is always worthwhile, even when the immediate response seems inadequate." The following days revealed how Westlake's administration had chosen to handle the situation. Rather than addressing Peterson's behavior directly, they had adopted a damage control approach that became increasingly evident as news of the conflict spread throughout the school community. Peterson himself attempted to reframe his actions, telling colleagues he had been pushing Jamal to reach his full potential, a narrative that ignored the documented pattern of dismissal and accusation. The faculty response split along predictable lines. Some teachers quietly provided supporting statements about Peterson's concerning behavior toward other minority students, while others closed ranks around their colleague out of professional courtesy, despite the evidence. Dr. Martinez, returning early from her family emergency after hearing about the situation, was appalled at what had occurred in her absence. "This is completely unacceptable," she told Jamal during a private meeting in her classroom. "I've reviewed the video evidence, and Mr. Peterson's behavior violates every principle of effective and ethical teaching." Her advocacy provided important validation, particularly when she spoke directly with Principal Simmons about the mathematical aspects of the confrontation, confirming that Jamal's solutions demonstrated legitimate understanding rather than memorization or cheating. The situation escalated further when local education activists learned about the incident through social media, where Tyler and Amara's friends had shared redacted versions of the classroom videos. Community reactions formed along familiar lines, with some parents defending Peterson and the school administration, while others demanded more substantive response to what they viewed as clear discrimination. Under mounting pressure from multiple directions, the school board finally became involved, requesting a formal briefing from Principal Simmons about the situation and planned resolution. By this point, nearly 2 weeks had passed since the initial confrontation, and Jamal had endured increasingly uncomfortable scrutiny throughout the school, with some students expressing solidarity, while others questioned why he was causing trouble over what they perceived as a minor incident. The administration's eventual proposal reflected their desire to resolve the situation with minimal institutional disruption or acknowledgement of broader issues. Peterson would issue a formal apology to Jamal and undergo professional development training on diverse learning styles, while Jamal would be moved to an advanced placement mathematics class more suited to his demonstrated abilities. When this compromise was presented to Jamal and his grandmother during a follow-up meeting, Miss Elaine's response was measured but firm. An apology without genuine understanding or consequences is merely performance. And moving Jamal to an advanced class, while appropriate for his abilities, does nothing to address the environment that allowed this discrimination to occur in the first place. Dr. Williams, who had continued supporting Jamal throughout the process, agreed. This solution addresses symptoms rather than causes. What about other students who might face similar treatment but lack Jamal's exceptional mathematical abilities to make the discrimination so evident? What systematic changes will prevent future incidents? The questions hung in the air, unanswered, highlighting the fundamental disconnect between individual accommodation and institutional reform. Jamal, who had remained relatively quiet throughout the administrative proceedings, finally spoke up. "I don't want special treatment," he said clearly. "I want fair treatment, for myself and everyone else." His voice, though soft, carried the moral authority that came from standing in his truth after years of hiding his abilities. "Moving me to an advanced class might be right academically, but it feels like you're removing the problem instead of addressing it." Principal Simmons' expression tightened at this direct challenge to her proposed resolution, but before she could respond, Dr. Williams offered an unexpected alternative. "Perhaps there's another approach we might consider, one that addresses both Jamal's educational needs and the broader issues this situation has revealed." Dr. Williams' alternative proposal was elegantly simple, yet potentially transformative. A mathematical demonstration event hosted at the university, where Jamal would solve problems posed by a panel of mathematics professors demonstrating his abilities in an objective public forum. This would provide several benefits, Williams explained to the small group gathered in Principal Simmons' office. First, it would give Jamal an appropriate venue to demonstrate his mathematical understanding beyond question. Second, it would create an educational opportunity for Westlake students and faculty to witness advanced mathematical thinking. Third, it would establish an objective record of Jamal's abilities separate from any individual teacher's assessment. Principal Simmons looked skeptical. "This seems rather theatrical for what should be an internal academic matter," she objected. Our proposed solution already addresses the immediate concerns. Dr. Martinez, who had joined the meeting as Jamal's regular mathematics teacher, countered quickly. With respect, Principal Simmons, this approach actually aligns perfectly with Westlake's mission of recognizing and nurturing exceptional talent. It transforms a challenging situation into an educational opportunity. The subtle reminder of the school's own marketing language was effective, particularly with 2 school board members present in the meeting. After further discussion, a compromise emerged. The mathematical demonstration would proceed with Mr. Peterson, invited to attend alongside Westlake administrators, faculty, and Jamal's classmates. While not framed as a direct response to the discrimination complaint, the event would nevertheless create a public record of Jamal's abilities that would be difficult to dismiss or minimize. Peterson initially resisted participating, claiming the event was designed to embarrass him, but eventually agreed when the school board president personally requested his attendance. The university's mathematics department enthusiastically supported Dr. Williams' initiative, offering their largest lecture hall and assembling a distinguished panel of professors to pose questions and evaluate responses. For Jamal, the prospect of public mathematical performance created a complex mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Years of deliberately hiding his abilities made the idea of center-stage demonstration terrifying, yet the opportunity to fully engage with mathematics at an appropriate level was undeniably appealing. What if I freeze up, he worried, during an evening practice session with Dr. Williams, Tyler, and Amara in the university's empty classroom? What if I make simple mistakes because of nervousness? Williams smiled reassuringly. Mathematics isn't about perfect performance, it's about the process of thinking. The panel will be evaluating your approach and understanding not just whether you get the final answer correct in record time. These practice sessions became a nightly ritual in the week leading up to the event, with Williams presenting increasingly challenging problems while Jamal worked through them aloud, explaining his thought process. During one such session, Williams introduced Jamal to Dr. Victoria Chen, a renowned mathematician visiting from Princeton University. "I'd like you to look at something," Williams said, handing her one of Jamal's notebooks. This is some of Jamal's independent exploration related to distribution patterns in certain prime number sequences. Dr. Chen examined the work with the careful attention of someone accustomed to evaluating mathematical thinking at the highest levels. Her growing interest was evident as she asked Jamal several pointed questions about his approach, particularly his novel method for analyzing pattern irregularities. "This is genuinely interesting," she told Williams after their discussion. "He's approaching the Goldbach-type problems from an angle I haven't seen fully explored in the literature." Her assessment transformed the upcoming demonstration from merely validating Jamal's basic competence to potentially showcasing original mathematical thinking. Meanwhile, Miss Elaine watched these developments with mixed emotions. Pride in her grandson's abilities, combining with concern about the pressure being placed upon him. "I've always taught Jamal to stand up for himself," she confided to Dr. Williams one evening, as they watched Jamal work through a complex problem with Dr. Chen. "But I never wanted him to become some kind of mathematical performing seal put on display to prove his worth." Williams nodded understandingly. "I share your concern, which is why we're focusing on the mathematical substance rather than creating a confrontational atmosphere. This isn't about humiliating Peterson, it's about creating space for Jamal's genuine abilities to be recognized without artificial constraints." The night before the demonstration, Jamal experienced a crisis of confidence that sent him spiraling into doubt. Unable to sleep and overwhelmed by the attention his formerly private mathematical life had attracted, he called Dr. Williams. At 11:30, his voice strained with anxiety. "I can't do this," he admitted. "Everyone's expecting me to be some kind of genius, but what if I'm not? What if tomorrow proves Peterson right after all?" Williams' response was thoughtful rather than dismissive. "When I was a doctoral candidate at Stanford, he shared I was the only black student in the pure mathematics program. Before my dissertation defense, a faculty member suggested my advisor had carried me through the program. The comment paralyzed me with doubt despite years of successful research." He paused, allowing Jamal to absorb the parallel. My mentor told me something I've never forgotten. Mathematics doesn't care about the color of the hand that writes the proof. Tomorrow isn't about proving anything to Peterson. It's about you claiming your rightful place in the mathematical conversation. Something in William's words resonated deeply with Jamal, releasing a creative energy that had been blocked by anxiety. After their call, he returned to a mathematical problem he'd been exploring intermittently for months, a modified approach to the Goldbach conjecture that had previously stymied him. Working through the night with renewed focus, he experienced the rare euphoria of mathematical breakthrough, developing a novel approach that extended existing methods in a promising direction. When he arrived at the university the next morning, he looked simultaneously exhausted and exhilarated, carrying his breakthrough in hastily scribbled notes that he showed to Dr. Chen before the event began. Her eyes widened as she reviewed his work, recognizing the significance of what he had accomplished overnight. "This is remarkable," she told Williams quietly. "We may need to adjust the final segment of today's program." The university's largest lecture hall filled quickly that Saturday morning. The front rows held a distinguished panel of mathematics professors, including Dr. Chen and colleagues from several universities. Behind them sat Westlake administrators, faculty members, and students, with Principal Simmons, the school board president, and other officials prominently positioned. Mr. Peterson arrived last, taking a seat near the back with an expression that combined skepticism with obvious discomfort. The atmosphere carried a tension unusual for academic demonstrations, with whispered conversations, creating a constant undertone until Dr. Williams stepped to the podium to begin the proceedings. "Welcome to this special mathematical demonstration." He began his commanding presence, immediately quieting the room. Today's program will feature several levels of mathematical challenges designed to demonstrate not just computational skill, but conceptual understanding and creative problem-solving approaches. He explained the format. Jamal would solve increasingly difficult problems posed by the panel, who would then ask questions about his methodology and reasoning. The audience would observe the entire process, including Jamal's explanations of his approach. "This is not a test or competition," Williams emphasized, but rather an opportunity to witness mathematical thinking in action. As Jamal took his place at the whiteboard, his initial nervousness was visible in his slightly shaking hands. The first set of problems, presented by a professor of applied mathematics, involved complex calculus and differential equations, similar to those Peterson had challenged him with in class. Despite his anxiety, Jamal worked through them methodically, his natural mathematical instincts taking over as he engaged with the familiar territory of numbers and symbols. From the audience, Peterson could be heard whispering to a colleague, "These are standard problems any prepared student could solve." His dismissive comment, though quiet, carried in a momentary lull, causing several heads to turn in his direction. The second round of problems moved into more advanced territory, requiring deep mathematical insight rather than mere technical proficiency. As Jamal developed elegant solutions that demonstrated not just correct answers but creative approaches, the audience's response shifted from polite attention to genuine engagement. Even those with limited mathematical background could recognize the increasing difficulty of the challenges and the impressive nature of Jamal's solutions. The panel members exchanged appreciative glances as Jamal tackled university-level mathematics with the confidence of someone discussing familiar concepts rather than stretching beyond his education level. Dr. Anna Pan Chen presented the third challenge, related to her current research in number theory. This problem connects to open questions in the field, she explained, writing a complex expression on the board. "I'm interested in your approach, rather than a complete solution, which might not be achievable in this format." Jamal studied the problem thoughtfully, his initial hesitation giving way to focused engagement as he recognized connections to areas he had explored independently. Working methodically on the whiteboard, he occasionally paused to consider alternative approaches, narrating his thought process with growing confidence. At one point, he glanced briefly toward his grandmother in the audience, drawing strength from her, encouraging nod before continuing his solution. When he completed his approach, Dr. Chen's expression reflected genuine professional interest rather than the evaluative assessment of earlier problems. "You've taken a novel pathway here," she observed, pointing to a particular transformation Jamal had applied. "Can you elaborate on your reasoning for this specific approach?" Jamal's explanation demonstrated not just technical understanding, but mathematical intuition, the ability to sense productive pathways through complex theoretical landscapes that characterizes truly gifted mathematicians. As the demonstration progressed, Peterson's earlier confidence visibly eroded his posture, becoming increasingly uncomfortable as the objective evidence of Jamal's exceptional ability mounted beyond any possibility of dismissal. When he attempted to leave discreetly before the final segment, Dr. Williams' voice stopped him. "Mr. Peterson, we're about to begin the most interesting portion of today's program. I believe you'll find it particularly relevant to your assessment of Jamal's mathematical capabilities." The final challenge transformed the demonstration from merely impressive to genuinely significant in mathematical terms. For the final segment, Dr. Chen announced, "I've asked Jamal to present some of his original work exploring an approach to the Goldbach-type conjectures in number theory." The murmur that spread through the mathematics faculty indicated their recognition of the topic's significance. These were unsolved problems that had challenged mathematicians for centuries. Jamal approached the whiteboard with the quiet confidence that came from discussing his true mathematical passion rather than merely responding to assigned problems. For the next 20 minutes, he presented his approach to analyzing pattern irregularities in certain prime number distributions, including the breakthrough insight he had developed the previous night. His explanation included technical details that were beyond most of the audience's understanding, but the mathematics faculty's reaction communicated the significance clearly enough. They leaned forward attentively occasionally, exchanging surprised glances or noting particulars in their notebooks. When Jamal concluded his presentation, Dr. Chen addressed the audience. "What we've just witnessed goes beyond demonstrating mathematical competence or even advanced understanding for a high school student. Jamal's approach represents original research with significant implications for this area of number theory. The method he's developed extends existing approaches in a novel direction that merits serious consideration by the mathematical community." Her professional assessment, delivered with the authority of a leading researcher in the field, created a moment of profound significance that transcended the immediate context of Jamal's conflict with Peterson. The undeniable evidence of exceptional mathematical gift had been established not merely through solving assigned problems, but through contributing original thinking to the field, the highest standard of mathematical ability. The panel's formal evaluation, delivered after brief deliberation, was unanimous in recognizing Jamal's extraordinary talent and the injustice of having that talent questioned or dismissed. It is the panel's assessment. Dr. Williams announced that Jamal Washington demonstrates mathematical understanding and creativity at a level rarely encountered even among advanced undergraduate mathematics majors. His work represents not just technical proficiency, but genuine mathematical insight and originality. As the event concluded, the implications were impossible to ignore. Principal Simmons' expression reflected the uncomfortable recognition that her institution had fundamentally misjudged a student's capabilities based on preconceptions rather than evidence. The school board members present appeared similarly sobered by the demonstration's outcome and its implications for their handling of the original complaint. And Peterson, whose dismissive challenge had initiated this entire sequence of events, sat with the stunned expression of someone whose worldview had collided irrevocably with contradictory reality. Have you ever had your abilities validated after someone doubted you because of stereotypes or appearances? Comment number 1. If you've experienced the satisfaction of proving doubters wrong, or number 2, if you're still waiting for that moment of vindication. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about overcoming prejudice and recognizing talent in unexpected places. What do you think will happen next for Jamal? Will his public success change how he's treated at school, or will he continue facing bias despite this powerful demonstration? Let's find out as we see how this mathematical triumph transforms both Jamal's life and his school environment. The university auditorium hummed with anticipatory tension as the distinguished panel of mathematics faculty took their seats at the long table facing the audience. Dr. James Williams stood at the podium, his commanding presence immediately drawing attention as he introduced the format for the morning's unusual event. Today's mathematical demonstration will progress through several levels of increasing complexity, he explained, designed to showcase not only computational ability, but conceptual understanding and creative problem-solving approaches. In the front row, Principal Eleanor Simmons sat with carefully maintained composure beside the Westlake Academy School Board president, both clearly aware of the broader implications this demonstration held for their institution. Several rows behind them, Mr. Peterson maintained a skeptical expression, arms crossed defensively across his chest as he whispered occasional comments to a colleague. The student section filled one entire side of the auditorium with Jamal's classmates, showing a mixture of curiosity and support, many still processing the dramatic events that had led to this unprecedented situation. Jamal himself waited in an adjacent preparation room, reviewing his notes one final time, while trying to control the anxiety that threatened to overwhelm his usual mathematical focus. Dr. Sen, Victoria Chen, the visiting Princeton mathematician who had taken particular interest in his work, stopped by with final words of encouragement. Remember, she told him quietly, mathematics isn't a performance, it's a conversation. Just engage with the problems as you would in your own notebooks, and the rest will follow naturally. Her calm confidence helped steady his nerves as Dr. Williams called him to the stage. Walking to the whiteboard, positioned center stage, Jamal felt the weight of every eye in the auditorium. The silence was absolute as he picked up the marker, nodding to indicate his readiness for the first challenge. Dr. Williams introduced Professor Michael Rivera, an applied mathematician from the university's engineering department, who presented the initial problems. A series of differential equations and multivariable calculus challenges, similar to those Peterson had used to challenge Jamal in class. I'd like you to solve these sequentially, Rivera instructed, explaining your approach as you proceed. Despite his initial nervousness, Jamal's hand moved with growing confidence as he worked through the familiar mathematical territory. The language of equations and functions had always been more natural to him than English, and as he immersed himself in the problems, his anxiety receded before the pure engagement of mathematical thinking. For this differential equation, he explained, writing cleanly across the board. I'll first use substitution to transform it into a more manageable form, then apply separation of variables to reach the general solution. His voice, though soft, carried clearly through the silent auditorium as he narrated each step, demonstrating not just the mechanics of solution, but the conceptual understanding behind his choices. From his seat in the audience, Peterson whispered audibly to his neighbor, "These are standard problems any prepared student could solve with sufficient coaching." The comment drew several sharp glances from nearby faculty members, particularly as Jamal was currently explaining an elegant approach that streamlined the conventional solution method. The first round concluded with Jamal having solved all 5 problems correctly, his methodical explanations revealing a depth of understanding that went well beyond memorized procedures. Professor Rivera nodded appreciatively before yielding to the next panelist, Dr. Sophia Nguyen, a theoretical mathematician specializing in abstract algebra. The next set of problems Dr. Nguyen explained moves beyond computation into more conceptual territory. She presented challenges involving group theory, topological principles, and proof structures that would challenge many undergraduate mathematics majors. These problems required not just technical proficiency, but mathematical creativity, the ability to make intuitive leaps while maintaining rigorous logical structure. Jamal approached these challenges with evident enjoyment, his earlier nervousness completely replaced by the intellectual engagement that had always characterized his private, mathematical explorations. When faced with a particularly abstract proof challenge, he paused thoughtfully before developing an approach that elegantly connected seemingly disparate concepts. "I notice a structural similarity between these two systems," he explained, drawing connecting arrows between different sections of his work, which suggests a transformation that simplifies the entire proof sequence. Dr. Paston.or.r. Nguyen's eyebrows raised slightly at his insight. That's a connection most students wouldn't recognize immediately, she noted with professional approval. The audience's engagement deepened as the demonstration progressed, with even those without mathematical background recognizing they were witnessing something extraordinary. The panel members exchanged increasingly impressed glances as Jamal navigated university-level mathematics with the confidence of someone discussing familiar concepts rather than stretching beyond his education level. For the third round, Dr. Chen approached the board with a complex expression related to her current research. This connects to open questions in number theory, she explained. I'm interested in your approach rather than expecting a complete solution which might not be achievable in this format. Jamal studied the problem with evident concentration, his initial hesitation giving way to focused engagement as he recognized connections to areas he had explored independently. His approach combined established techniques with creative innovations, particularly in how he structured his analysis of the problem's underlying patterns. At one critical juncture, he paused, momentarily uncertain about which pathway to pursue. His eyes briefly found his grandmother in the audience, drawing strength from her encouraging nod before continuing with renewed confidence. This particular transformation, he explained, indicating a key step in his approach, allows us to reframe the problem in terms of distribution patterns rather than individual cases, making the underlying structure more accessible. Chen's expression reflected genuine professional interest rather than mere evaluation. You've taken an unexpected approach here, she observed. Can you elaborate on your reasoning for this specific method? Jamal's explanation demonstrated not just technical understanding but mathematical intuition, the ability to sense productive pathways through complex theoretical landscapes that characterizes truly gifted mathematicians. Throughout the third round, the growing discomfort on Peterson's face became increasingly evident. What had begun as skepticism had transformed into the uncomfortable recognition of having fundamentally misjudged Jamal's abilities. When he attempted to leave discreetly before the final segment, Dr. D's Williams' voice stopped him. Mr. Peterson, we're about to begin what many mathematicians would consider the most significant portion of today's demonstration. I believe you'll find it particularly relevant to your assessment of Jamal's capabilities. The substitute teacher reluctantly returned to his seat as Dr. Williams introduced the final segment. For our concluding challenge, Williams announced Dr. Chen has asked Jamal to present some of his original mathematical work exploring approaches to unsolved problems in number theory. A murmur spread through the mathematics faculty at this unexpected development. Original research was far beyond what anyone might reasonably expect from even the most talented high school student. Jamal approached the board with the quiet confidence that came from discussing his true mathematical passion. I've been exploring alternative approaches to analyzing pattern irregularities in certain prime number distributions. He began writing a series of expressions that represented his starting framework. Specifically, I've been considering a modified approach to examining Goldbach-type conjectures. For the next 20 minutes, he presented the mathematical exploration that had occupied his private notebooks for months, including the breakthrough insight he had developed during his sleepless night before the demonstration. The technical complexity of his presentation was beyond most of the audience's understanding, but the mathematics faculty's reaction communicated the significance clearly enough. They leaned forward attentively, occasionally, exchanging surprised glances or noting particulars in their notebooks. Dr. Chen occasionally interjected with clarifying questions that allowed Jamal to elaborate on specific aspects of his approach, their exchange resembling a collaboration between colleagues rather than an examination of a student. When Jamal concluded his presentation, the auditorium remained silent for several moments, the audience processing what they had witnessed. Dr. Chen broke the silence, addressing both the panel and the broader audience. What we've just seen goes beyond demonstrating mathematical competence or even advanced understanding for a high school student. Jamal's approach represents original research with significant implications for this area of number theory. The method he's developed extends existing approaches in a novel direction that merits serious consideration by the mathematical community. Her assessment, delivered with the authority of a leading researcher in the field, transformed the demonstration from an educational exercise into a genuine mathematical event. The panel's formal evaluation, delivered after brief deliberation, was unanimous in recognizing Jamal's extraordinary talent. "It is our assessment, Dr." Williams announced, reading from their joint statement, that Jamal Washington demonstrates mathematical understanding and creativity at a level rarely encountered even among advanced undergraduate mathematics majors. His work represents not just technical proficiency, but genuine mathematical insight and originality. The statement continued with specific commendations regarding Jamal's problem-solving approaches, conceptual understanding, and research potential, concluding with a formal recommendation that he be provided with appropriate, advanced mathematical education and mentorship opportunities. As the demonstration concluded, the implications were impossible to ignore. Principal Simmons' expression reflected the uncomfortable recognition that her institution had fundamentally misjudged a student's capabilities based on preconceptions rather than evidence. The school board members present appeared similarly sobered by the demonstration's outcome and its implications for their handling of the original complaint. And Peterson, whose dismissive challenge had initiated this entire sequence of events, sat with the stunned expression of someone whose worldview had collided irrevocably with contradictory reality. The audience rose in spontaneous applause as Jamal rejoined his grandmother Tyler and Amara in the front row. MissW.com. Elaine's eyes shimmered with unshed tears of pride as she embraced her grandson, whispering, "Your parents would have been so proud today." The mathematical demonstration had accomplished what weeks of administrative complaints and evidence submissions could not, to the Brody. It had created an undeniable public record of both Jamal's extraordinary abilities and the injustice of Day, having those abilities questioned or dismissed based on prejudice rather than evidence. As people began filing out of the auditorium, Principal Simmons approached Jamal and his grandmother, her professional demeanor slightly softened by what could only be described as chastened respect. "Mr. Washington, Miss Plack. Washington, I believe we need to revisit our earlier discussions regarding appropriate educational accommodations and responses to the concerns you raised." Her careful phrasing acknowledged the inadequacy of the school's previous position without explicitly admitting error. "I would welcome the opportunity," Miss Elaine replied with dignity, "to ensure that Jamal receives both the educational support and the basic respect that his abilities warrant." The exchange, though brief and carefully worded, represented a significant shift in power dynamics, from institutional authority dictating terms to a more balanced recognition of Jamal's legitimate needs and concerns. As they left the auditorium, Dr. Williams walked alongside Jamal. "How does it feel," he asked quietly, "to finally share your mathematical voice openly?" Jamal considered the question thoughtfully. "Scary," he admitted, "but also right somehow. Like I've been holding my breath for years without realizing it." Williams nodded understanding. "That's how truth feels when it finally emerges, terrifying and liberating simultaneously. The mathematical community is fortunate that you've decided to join the conversation." The demonstration had accomplished its immediate purpose of validating Jamal's abilities beyond question, but its full implications for his education, for Westlake Academy's policies, and for Jamal's own relationship with his Orion mathematical gift would only become clear in the days and weeks ahead. The Monday following the mathematical demonstration brought immediate and tangible changes to Jamal's school experience. Principal Simmons called a special assembly to address the entire student body, with Jamal and his grandmother seated prominently in the front row. Westlake Academy prides itself on recognizing and nurturing exceptional talent. She began her carefully prepared statement, acknowledging the events of recent weeks without directly mentioning Peterson or specific allegations of discrimination. "Recent events have highlighted areas where our commitment to this mission requires renewed attention and improved practices." She announced several immediate policy changes, including a comprehensive review of how student abilities were assessed and challenged new protocols for addressing concerns about faculty conduct and the formation of a diversity committee to protocols, evaluate school culture, and recommend improvements. While the language remained diplomatic, the public nature of the address, delivered before the entire school rather than handled quietly through administrative channels, represented a significant institutional response. The most immediate consequence for Peterson had come the previous evening when the school board accepted his resignation following an emergency closed-door session. The official announcement cited personal reasons for his departure, but the timing left little doubt about the actual circumstances. Rumors circulated that legal advisors had convinced the board that Peterson's documented behavior created potential liability issues that made separation the most prudent course regardless of their personal opinions about the situation. Dr. Martinez resumed her position as Jamal's mathematics teacher with a new awareness of his extraordinary abilities. "I always suspected you were holding back," she told him during a private conversation after class, "but I had no idea of the true extent of your mathematical thinking." She was appointed to develop new anti-bias training for Westlake faculty, drawing on her own experiences as a Latina woman in STEM fields and the insights gained from Jamal's case. For Jamal himself, the transition from hiding his abilities to public recognition created complex challenges. Classmates who had previously paid him little attention now approached with questions about the demonstration or comments about his secret genius identity. Some interactions felt genuine and supportive, while others carried uncomfortable undertones of exoticizing or tokenizing his intelligence. "They're treating me like some kind of mathematical unicorn," he complained to Tyler and Amara during lunch, "not as an actual person." His friends helped him navigate this uncomfortable new visibility, deflecting intrusive questions and maintaining the grounded perspective that had characterized their friendship from the beginning. "You're still the same Jamal who gets chocolate milk on his upper lip and falls asleep during history documentaries," Amara reminded him with affectionate teasing. "The math stuff is what you do, not who you are." Dr. Williams formally invited Jamal to join his university research group, arranging with Westlake administration for a specialized educational plan that allowed him to take advanced mathematics courses at the university while completing his regular high school curriculum. The arrangement required careful balancing of Jamal's exceptional mathematical needs with the importance of maintaining normal social development and well-rounded education. Being a mathematical prodigy doesn't exempt you from learning history, literature, and how to communicate effectively, Williams advised. "Some of the most brilliant mathematicians I know are also widely read in philosophy, arts, and social sciences. Mathematics doesn't exist in isolation from the rest of human knowledge." Media attention followed the dramatic events at Westlake, bringing both opportunities and complications. Local news outlets covered the story, leading to interview requests, scholarship offers, and invitations to academic programs that recognized exceptional mathematical talent. Miss Elaine approached these developments with characteristic protective wisdom, carefully filtering opportunities to shield Jamal from exploitation while supporting genuine educational advancement. "You don't need to accept every invitation or respond to every request," she reminded him. "Your mathematics belongs to you, not to anyone else's agenda or narrative." Jamal experienced complicated emotions about becoming an unintended symbol in conversations about racial bias in education. During a particularly reflective evening walk with Dr. Williams, he expressed his discomfort. "I never wanted to be the black math geniuses, proving stereotypes wrong," he admitted. "I just wanted to do mathematics, without having my race be relevant to how people view my abilities." Williams nodded understanding. That burden of representation is something every black person in predominantly white academic spaces experiences. Your mathematics is judged not just on its merits, but as a reflection on your entire race, a pressure white mathematicians never face. His expression softened with empathy. "It's unfair and exhausting, but it's also reality." The question becomes how to navigate that reality while protecting both your love for mathematics and your personal well-being. The conversation extended to William's own experiences as one of very few black mathematicians at elite institutions, providing Jamal with valuable perspective on the challenges of being the first or the only in academic environments. Structured around assumptions of whiteness. The isolation can be profound, Williams acknowledged. Finding community, people who understand both your academic passion and your lived experience, becomes essential for survival and success. Beyond Jamal's individual situation, the incident catalyzed broader institutional changes at Westlake. The hiring committee revised its practices to actively recruit diverse faculty candidates, particularly in STEM fields, where representation gaps were most pronounced. Curriculum reviews identified and addressed materials that reinforced stereotypes or presented narrow perspectives on achievement. The scholarship program expanded to create more opportunities for students from underrepresented backgrounds, with particular attention to removing barriers in the application and selection processes. Perhaps most significantly, other minority students began coming forward with their own experiences of bias or discrimination, creating a broader movement for institutional change. What had begun as Jamal's individual confrontation with Peterson had revealed systemic issues that affected many students' educational experiences, though few had Jamal's exceptional abilities to make the discrimination so undeniably evident. Dr. Chen's recognition of Jamal's original mathematical work led to an invitation to present at an upcoming number theory conference, an extraordinary opportunity for a high school student. With Williams' mentorship, Jamal began developing his insights into a format suitable for academic presentation, experiencing the rigorous process of formalizing intuitive mathematical thinking into precise, defensible arguments. His work continued on the prime number distribution patterns that had captured his interest, with significant progress following the breakthrough insights he had developed before the demonstration. Recognizing the importance of peer support, Jamal established an informal group for minority students interested in STEM fields, creating space for sharing experiences and strategies for navigating educational environments where their abilities might be questioned or undervalued. The group met weekly in Dr. Martinez's classroom, gradually expanding to include students from neighboring schools who had heard about the initiative. What had begun as a response to Jamal's specific experience evolved into a broader support network, addressing common challenges faced by underrepresented students in STEM education. With Williams' assistance, Jamal also helped establish a mentorship program pairing, promising students with university researchers, creating pathways for talent development that might otherwise go unrecognized. The program emphasized identifying and nurturing mathematical ability regardless of background, with particular attention to students whose potential might be overlooked due to cultural biases or limited educational resources. 3 months after the confrontation that had transformed his academic life, Jamal reflected on the unexpected journey during a conversation with Dr. Williams in the University Mathematics Building, where he now spent Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. "I spent years hiding what I loved most," he observed, gazing at the equations covering the whiteboard before them. "It seems almost unbelievable that something as painful as Peterson's challenge became the catalyst for finally engaging with mathematics openly." Williams nodded thoughtfully. "Transformation rarely comes through comfortable paths. The question is whether we allow painful experiences to diminish us or use them as catalysts for growth, not just personally but institutionally." Jamal considered this perspective, seeing how his individual experience had indeed created ripples of change, extending far beyond his own mathematical development. The confrontation that had threatened his academic standing had ultimately created space for both his exceptional abilities and those of others who might follow similar paths, transforming not just his relationship with mathematics, but the institutional structures that had previously constrained it. As they turned back to the complex proof they were developing together, Jamal experienced the profound satisfaction that comes from authentic engagement with one's true capabilities, the liberation of no longer needing to dim his mathematical light for others' comfort or expectations. The MIT admissions packet arrived on a crisp autumn afternoon, its substantial weight signaling the comprehensive welcome materials enclosed rather than the simple acceptance letter Jamal had received months earlier. At 17, he stood on the threshold of early admission to one of the world's premier mathematics programs, with a full scholarship that recognized both his extraordinary abilities and his family's financial circumstances. Miss Elaine watched from the kitchen doorway as her grandson examined the materials with quiet satisfaction, his expression reflecting the balanced confidence that had replaced both his former self-protective hiding and the brief period of uncomfortable celebrity that had followed the Peterson incident. "They've assigned me to Professor Chang as my freshman advisor," he noted, scanning the introductory letter. "Dr. Williams says she's brilliant in algebraic number theory." The past 2 years had transformed Jamal's academic trajectory in ways that would have been unimaginable before his confrontation with Peterson. The publication of his peer-reviewed paper in the Journal of Number Theory, co-authored with Dr. Victoria Chen, and based on the insights he had presented during the mathematical demonstration, had established his reputation in the mathematical community well beyond Westlake Academy. The paper, titled "Novel Approaches to Distribution Patterns in Specific Prime Sequences," had drawn attention not only for its mathematical contributions, but for the extraordinary youth of its primary author. Jamal's work had continued developing under Dr. Chen's long-distance mentorship and Dr. Williams' direct guidance, leading to a second paper currently under review and a presentation at the International Congress of Mathematicians that had received standing ovation from the assembled experts. Westlake Academy itself had undergone significant transformation following the Peterson incident and subsequent revelations about institutional culture. Principal Simmons, recognizing that her initial handling of the situation had nearly cost the school an extraordinary mathematical talent, had embraced reform with surprising vigor once the necessity became undeniable. The faculty and student body now reflected greater diversity, with intentional recruitment efforts and revised scholarship procedures, creating more equitable access to the school's resources. Dr. Martinez, promoted to academic dean the previous year, had implemented progressive policies addressing everything from curriculum design to disciplinary procedures, with particular attention to eliminating the subtle biases that had previously gone unchallenged within the institution. The mentorship program connecting university mathematicians with promising high school students had flourished under Williams and Jamal's collaborative leadership. What had begun as an informal initiative had developed into a structured program with university and foundation funding, identifying mathematical talent in schools throughout the region, with particular focus on students from backgrounds traditionally underrepresented in STEM fields. Tyler had graduated early and now attended the University of Michigan as a computer science major, while Amara had become student body president at Westlake, using her position to advocate for continued institutional improvement. Their friendship with Jamal had maintained its grounding influence throughout his rising mathematical profile, providing essential normalcy amidst the increasing recognition of his exceptional abilities. On weekends, Jamal still volunteered at his former middle school, working with students interested in mathematics and sciences. During one such session, he had noticed a quiet sixth grader named Marcus, whose problem-solving approaches showed unusual creativity and insight. "You solve problems differently than how they teach us," the boy had commented, after Jamal praised his innovative approach to a challenging question. "The teachers usually want us to follow the steps exactly." The observation had struck Jamal with its familiarity, reminding him powerfully of his own early experiences, navigating between mathematical intuition and educational expectations. Over subsequent weeks, he had developed a mentoring relationship with Marcus, recognizing in the young student's reluctance to draw attention to his abilities echoes of his own former self-protective strategies. "You don't have to hide how your mind works," he advised, during one session sharing aspects of his own journey while carefully avoiding positioning himself as an exceptional case. "Mathematics welcomes different pathways to understanding. That's how the field advances, Miss." Elaine had received an honorary degree from the local community college for her advocacy work in educational equity, an acknowledgement that had brought tears to her usually composed expression. The ceremony had recognized her role not only in supporting Jamal's journey, but in establishing a parent advocacy network that helped other families navigate institutional challenges within educational systems. Her wisdom and determination had become valuable resources beyond her immediate family, creating ripple effects that paralleled her grandson's influence in different spheres. News about Peterson had surfaced occasionally over the 2 years since his departure from Westlake. His attempt to sue the school for wrongful termination had failed spectacularly when the legal discovery process revealed multiple previous incidents at other schools, with several former students coming forward with similar experiences of two-eyed, racial bias, and inappropriate behavior. The case's dismissal had effectively ended his teaching career, though Jamal found no satisfaction in this outcome. Only relief that other students would be spared similar experiences. Jamal's summer before college would include participation in an elite mathematics research program at Princeton, where Dr. Chen had arranged for him to join a team exploring cutting-edge questions in number theory. The invitation represented not merely recognition of his technical abilities, but acceptance into the collaborative community of mathematical research, where ideas were developed through collective exploration rather than individual brilliance alone. Dr. Williams had watched Jamal's development with the pride of a mentor seeing potential fulfilled. "You've grown not just as a mathematician, but as a young man confident in claiming your rightful place in the conversation," he observed during their final regular meeting before Jamal's departure for MIT. "That's a transformation that extends far beyond equations and proofs." The university's annual mathematics challenge, now named the Washington-Williams Mathematics Initiative, in honor of both Jamal and his mentor, specifically sought to identify promising students from underrepresented backgrounds whose talents might otherwise go unrecognized or undeveloped. During the most recent challenge event, Jamal had delivered an address that distilled the wisdom gained through his extraordinary journey. "Mathematical talent exists everywhere," he told the assembled students, parents, and educators. "But opportunity does not. Our responsibility, as mathematicians, as educators, as a society, is to ensure that artificial barriers don't prevent any mind from contributing to humanity's oldest intellectual adventure." The mathematical community's recognition that they had nearly lost an extraordinary mind to bias and stereotyping had sparked important conversations within professional organizations and university departments. Without positioning himself as an activist, Jamal's story had become a powerful case study in how unexamined assumptions create systemic barriers to talent development, barriers that harm not only individual students but the field itself by limiting the diversity of perspectives and approaches that drive mathematical innovation. In quiet moments, Jamal sometimes revisited the journal he had begun keeping after the Peterson confrontation, contrasting his former self, hiding his abilities to avoid drawing attention, with his current confidence in engaging fully with his mathematical gifts. The transformation wasn't merely academic but deeply personal, reflecting a journey toward authenticity that extended beyond equations and theorems to his fundamental sense of self and possibility. On the evening before his departure to visit MIT's campus for freshman orientation, Jamal stood before a whiteboard in Dr. W.N. Williams' university office, putting final touches on an elegant proof they had been developing collaboratively over several months. The mathematical notation flowing across the board represented not just a solution to a specific problem, but a visual testament to how completely Jamal had emerged from hiding, claiming his place in the ancient and ongoing human conversation expressed through the language of mathematics. No longer afraid to shine, he added the final transformation, and turned to his mentor with the quiet satisfaction of mathematical clarity achieved through persistent creative engagement, the pure joy of a mind fully expressing its natural gifts without artificial constraint or fear of judgment. How has Jamal's journey from hiding his abilities to embracing his mathematical gift inspired you? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever hidden your own talents out of fear of judgment or stereotyping? If Jamal's story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful narratives about overcoming obstacles and recognizing potential in unexpected places. Don't forget to share this video with educators, parents, or students who might benefit from seeing how prejudice can blind us to extraordinary talent hiding in plain sight. Thank you for joining me for this remarkable story of transformation. From a moment of humiliation to a journey of self-discovery and systemic change. May it remind us all that genius appears in every community and deserves to be nurtured regardless of how it looks or where it comes from. Jamal's journey reveals how deeply bias can blind us to extraordinary talent. When Mr. Peterson mocked and accused him of cheating, he wasn't just questioning Jamal's abilities, he was revealing a fundamental assumption that brilliance couldn't exist within a young black student. This prejudice forced Jamal to hide his mathematical gift, sacrificing his true potential to avoid confrontation. The story demonstrates how institutional structures often protect discrimination rather than address it. Principal Simmons initially attempted to minimize the incident and even subtly threatened Jamal's scholarship, showing how systems prioritize maintaining order over justice until external pressure forces change. Dr. Williams' mentorship illustrates the crucial role allies play in helping marginalized students navigate hostile environments. By providing validation, strategic guidance, and creating platforms for Jamal's abilities to be objectively recognized, he helped transform an individual trauma into systemic change. Perhaps most powerfully, Jamal's experience shows that confronting discrimination, though painful, can catalyze both personal and institutional transformation. By stepping into his true mathematical identity rather than hiding it, he not only liberated himself, but created pathways for others facing similar barriers. The ultimate lesson is that genius exists everywhere, but opportunity does not. Our collective responsibility is to dismantle the barriers that prevent all minds from contributing their unique gifts to our shared human journey. Has there been a moment in your life where someone underestimated your abilities based on how you look or where you come from? Or have you witnessed talent being dismissed because it didn't match someone's expectations? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might inspire others facing similar challenges. If this journey of hidden genius and overcoming prejudice resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that challenge our assumptions and celebrate human potential in all its diverse forms. Don't forget to share this video with educators, parents, students, or anyone who needs a reminder that brilliance appears in every community, often hiding in plain sight due to our own biases. Together, we can create learning environments where every mind is recognized and nurtured. Thank you for joining us for Jamal's remarkable story. May it inspire us all to look deeper, challenge our assumptions, and champion the extraordinary potential that exists in unexpected places.